Hi, welcome. In this session, we are learning about database connectivity using Python. The things what we are going to work out by the end of the session. The types of database supported in Python. Our primary focus is on MySQL, and even we can work out with different databases as well. Ensure that you have installed MySQL DB plugins. Even we can use the similar approach of the same with the NetBeans as well. Loading database through our code, performing ACID property implementations, read operations on Python. And now, first of all, let us understand what the database and how the connectivity is planned with this. The APIs stands for the connection on database, where we follow. We will understand the database interfaces which are added to this and which are standardized. What are the databases we are using? Gatefly, MySQL, PostgreSQL, Microsoft Server of any version, Informix, Interbase, Oracle, and so on. These are all the possible databases that can be communicated with Python. What are the standards we follow? Minimal standards to connect with the database where we will utilize. These standards are the one API module where we are going to import, acquiring connection with the database, and the statements that we will issue for the connectivity as well stored procedures. As usually at the end of the program, we are going to close the connection on the database. What the step we will follow during the process? From Python, we use pip install MySQL connector Python, which is required. This goes to the generalized database, or else even we can take pip install MySQL client. This is one of the major requirement if you have to deal with the database connectivity, that is MySQL DB part of usage. Or we can use an approach of connectivity with the different forms where I can take pip install MySQL Python connection, where we can take as one of the approach. Using any of this, we can code handle the database connect and implementation in the Python. Loading database from the code, as we use MySQL DB is one of the standard where we can use for the connection. Using MySQL DB library has a function called connect, helps me out to establish the connection with the host. Here you can use localhost or the standard IP for localhost, or you can use the IP address of your machine. Port number 3306 is a standard port number for MySQL. According to other databases, the port number that may change. Your database instance name and username password where you configured at the time of installation. Then we need the cursor preparation that holds the query part and execution part for your database requirements. How do we execute the statements of SQL? We will do with execute function that helps us to perform the basic operations on it. Here just I use select version Basically, this query is belonging to MySQL. According to the database, you can handle the query part. Now record fetch. Here we have got fetch one method to get the record according to the query what you have used. Fetch one, fetch all is also the other part where we can use. If at all we are using fetch all, that returns the array of records which are available. As usually here I display the version number of the database what I am expected to be viewed. Disconnection. Anyway, we will stop the connection of the database and my job is completed. This is how we use a basic code for the database connectivity. Let us go further. Flow of execution, how it happens. First of all, I request Python application to get connected with the database. Connector of MySQL will communicate with the connection request with the database. Once database found identified, the response of connection will be given back to the application via the connector. And now the application that will load the cursor to handle your database information in the form of a query. Once the connection is handled, then we take the cursor to execute the query part. This is the execute method will help us. This will be submitted to the database to perform the backend operation. On success, it returns the result oriented data to the user via the connector. This is where we use a basic connection activity during the process of Python. Yeah. Now where we follow some more the features of connection. This is username where we define as default root from our application. Password according to your configuration what you have given at the time of installation of MySQL. Host name, it's an IP address where you will follow as a default IP address or you will take the IP address according to your operating system. Yeah. Then database name. This is the instance of the database where you will use it for the connectivity. For me, this is MyDB. Then next, we move ahead. Inserting record into the database. In order to insert the record, we follow different approaches of the commands where I can provide insert into followed by the command of table what I am utilizing over here, and where we'll pass the parameters on it to insert the record. This is basically how we use insert operation. These steps we will identify, we will find practically with respect to our applications. Let us even identify if at all I have to add multiple records. So first of all, I'll configure the records over here in the record to insert, or I can write the command of number of records to insert over here to set what are the records are there. Now here you can see statement of insert is prepared, records are configured and cursor made ready, and this is prepared to true is optional anyway. Now I want to insert 3 records. I will call execute many. Execute many are 2 functions which are available. If I take execute, that will insert only 1 record at a time. If you go with execute many, helps you to insert more record according to your configurations. Hope the concept is made clear. Let us move ahead for more implementations. How do I fetch the data from my table? First of all, the same process what I am expecting here, the APIs of the Python, request of connectivity and request of fetch records is given to connector, where connector has the request furthermore as fetch all. Fetch one, fetch all. Fetch one is only 1 record, fetch all as multiple records. Data which is to be retrieved from the table is given a request, and the response of retrieval is given to the user via the connector. This is where we find the view of number of records from the Python. Let us find practically the way of approach, how do we deal with it.